Okay, this is investigation review for grade 5. There's a lot of things in here, but I'm only going to go over the ones that I feel we haven't touched on yet in math class. We have talked about bar graphs, but I do want to go over bar graph because it relates to the histogram. So first of all, in a bar graph, we have data that we need to put into a table to help us understand it. So what we're going to do is we're going to put this information into a frequency table. So the number of problems correct is the information. This is all the data about the numbers of problems that were correct. So we have 8 is our the numbers that we want to put in there, our range from 1 all the way to our highest number 8. So that's where those numbers come from. Now the frequency is how often we see those different numbers. So how often do we see the 3, the 6, the 5, and so on. What we're going to do over here is we're going to keep a tally, and that makes it easier for us when it comes to making our graphs. So I go through each number. I have a 3, so I put a tally mark by the 3. A 6, so I put a tally mark in there. A 5, so I put a tally mark there. Another 5, so there's another tally mark. 8, 2 more for the 8s, 8 and 8. 1, 2, 3, 4 4s, so I'm going to go ahead and put 1, 2, 3, 4 of those there. A 1, a 3, and then another 4. Now because I already have 4 here, I'm going to make my line across for my 5 marker, because we know when we have tallies 1, 2, 3, 4, and then the 5 goes across like that. Now I can write in the frequency. The frequency of the number 1 is 1 time. I don't have any for 2. I have 2 for the number 3, and I know this might be a little hard to read because of this board, but we'll get the idea. I have 5 number 4s. I have 2 with 5 correct. I have 1 with 6 correct, 0 with 7 correct, and 2 with 8 correct. So that's what we call a frequency table. You have the tally marks, you have the frequency that something happens, and then the actual choices of the number correct. So when we go to put that into a bar graph, if you look down here, we have a bar graph, and I've already set up part of it. Problems correct, number of students. This is number correct. So the number correct's on the bottom. So I start with 1. I have 1 person who has 1 correct. So I put my, and of course, like you know, I always tell you you need to use rulers or straight edges to make those little lines. Number 2, I have 0, so I don't put anything there. Number 3, I have 2, so I go up to the 2 mark. And if I go up to the 2 mark, I can make my mark cross like that for 3 correct. And then I would make my bar like that. And then of course 4, I have 5 correct, so we would go across and do that with our straight edge again so that we are at the right spot. Okay. And oops, that's a little over. And we make our lines like this. All right, we'd color it in again. And then 5, we said we had 2, so that would be the same as 3. So I'm going to put that at the same height. 6 was 1, so that's the same height as 1. 7, we had none, and then finally we had 2 again at 8. So we'd have that at the same height. And we'd make our bar graph. Okay? Now a histogram, what a histogram is instead of doing each number individually, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, what we do is we put intervals. So, and we want the same kind of interval. So here we have 0 through 2. Then we have 3 through 5. Then we have 6 through 8. So we go back up to our table here, and we look at how many people had 0 to 2 correct. Well, there's only one, so I would make my bar go to 1. How many people had 3 to 5 correct? So I look at my 3, I had 2 there, I have 5 there, that's 7, 8, 9. So I had 9 people between the numbers 3 and 5 correct. And then I would fill that in again. Again, you know I like neatness and stuff, but because this is just a little learning tool, I am going to spend less time on that type of thing. 6 through 8, we have 2 plus 0 plus 1, which gives us 3. So we would make our line across at 3, and then we would fill that in like that. Okay? And that's what a histogram would look like versus a bar graph. They have each individual number in a bar graph, and then we have all 3 like that for histogram, where we have intervals 0 to 2, 3 to 5, 6 to 8. And that's what's meant by that histogram. Okay? Now the other part we have in our book is when we go on, they start to talk to us about a pictograph and a stem and leaf plot. Well, with a pictograph, we did spend time doing that in social studies. We spent time doing that in science, and also then in math. So if we look in our book here, we can see here's our pictograph where we have some each sandwich equals 4 students, so that's 4, 8, and so on down the line. We can also add them up, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Take that 10 and then multiply it by 4, so 40 students was the grilled cheese as their favorite sandwich. For smoked turkey, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so we could do 5 times 4 and get 20 for the smoked turkey. Okay, so we did go over that before. Just remember that each sandwich is not a student, but it's 4 students for each one. Okay, we also talked about a pie chart where you have the different pieces of the day: sports, sleeping, eat, reading, playing, watching TV. If this was a typical chart, here's a halfway point, so you can see that this would be 50%, this would be 50%, and you can tell by the sizes of each pie piece which was the largest amount of activity and which ones were the smallest amount of activity. So if there's 24 hours in a day, I could look at half of that day, which would be 12 hours. So I know that sports, watching television, and playing is 50% of his day, or 12 hours of his day. The other part of his day, the other 12 hours, are sleeping, eating, and reading. Now, when we look at that stem and leaf plot, okay, that stem and leaf plot, as we look at it, right, I'm just going to do this on this paper here. A stem and leaf plot basically takes numbers and breaks them into their tens column and their ones column for right now as the data that we're going to look at. So let's say we were buying Thanksgiving turkeys, and those Thanksgiving turkeys weighed 12 pounds, 18 pounds, 22 pounds, 15 pounds, 19 pounds, and 26 pounds. So as a stem and leaf, what we do is we take and we have the stem part over here, stem, and then over here is the leaf part, the leaves, or the leaf. I should probably put leaf. Okay, leaf part. All right, we'll just leave it like that. So stem of this one would be 1. That's the big part. Then the leaf is the part that's attached to it, the ones column, the 2. Now here we have a 1. We want to put these in order first. Let's do that to make sure that we have them in order. So 12 comes first, then we have 15, then we have 18, then we have 19, then we have 22, and then we have 26. So we have them in order. So now we're going to take the 5. We leave the 1 stem. Same stem, different leaf. It's a 5. Then we have 8 for 18. And we have 9 for 19. Now if I had 2 18s, I'd put 2 8s here. If I had 3 15s, then I'd put 3 5s here. For the 2s, then I have the 2 stem, the 20s, and then I would put the 2 for 22, and then the 6 for 26. You can actually think of it like a plant. So if this was the stem 1, then we have the leaf coming out here at 2, a leaf over here at 5, a leaf over here at 8, a leaf over here at 9. They have the same beginning, but then they come out differently. So you have 12, 15, 18, 19. Here you have 22 and 22. That's what a stem and leaf plot looks like. You're taking it and you're putting it into the 10s and the 1s, the 10s and the 1s, and all the 1s are coming out. So you read it 12, 15, 18, 19, and so on. Okay? The other piece that we might want to look at is a Venn diagram. Now normally when we talk about Venn diagrams, we're usually talking about Venn diagrams in reading where we're comparing things. And we say, okay, these are their differences, these are their similarities. But today we're going to look at Venn diagrams with information and numbers. So we have those 2 interlocking circles. And as we have those 2 interlocking circles, we might have things like, okay, over on this side we're going to have oranges. Over on this side we're going to have apples. Okay, and then of course in the middle we know is both. Alright, so let's say it's our lunch time and it's lunch. So for lunch we might have 6 students that had oranges and we have 4 students that had apples. And there were some kids in their lunch that had both oranges and apples. So let's say there's 2 that had both oranges and apples in their lunch. But now we know some kids probably didn't have some fruit in their lunch. So maybe there are 3 kids without fruit in their lunch. So that's going to go on the outside over here because these kids have neither. And that's kind of a difference from our Venn diagram. We could kind of get this idea, oranges, apples, both oranges and apples. But this neither is a thing that we normally don't see when we're doing writing. So now what we're going to look at is, well, how many students are there all together? We can tell how many students there are all together by adding up the numbers that are inside and outside our Venn diagram. So we have 6 and 4 is 10, plus 2 more is 12, plus 3 more is 15. So we had 15 students that we surveyed about their lunches. 6 had oranges, 4 had apples, 2 had both oranges and apples, and 3 had neither. Okay, that's how we use a Venn diagram with numbers and in our math. And that's a little bit about our investigation review for today.